Welcome to the Conquer Republic House. I'm Bob Thomas. My wife Sims and I own this slice of paradise at 1008 Southard Street, built in approximately 1875. In 1828, Key West became part of the United States when the U.S. government built a naval base here to combat piracy. Surveyor William Whitehead platted the city of Key West. A year later, our street was named for the Secretary of the Navy and prominent statesman, Samuel Southard. A few years later, a shipwrecked William Walls founded the first cigar factory in Key West, and by 1888, the island had 166 cigar factories producing 10 million stogies per year. During that time, many of the men who lived in our house were cigar rollers. During the American Civil War, Key West was under the control of the Union and served as a substantial naval base and blockade point against the Confederacy. A few years after the war, John Roberts, a mariner, and his wife Jane immigrated to Key West from Hopetown in the Bahamas. Their son Benjamin, a mariner and master carpenter, bought 2 lots at 1008 Southard Street and built our Bahamian-style wood-framed house in 1875. Around 1908, millionaire Henry Flagler began construction on the Florida Keys Overseas Railroad. By 1916, the first trains chugged from the mainland of Florida to Key West. The railroad connected the previously isolated Keys with the mainland. By 1919, the same railroad baron, Henry Flagler, built a resort called the Long Key Fishing Camp, and sailfish became a prized game fish for the first time. Did you know that Pan American World Airways, or Pan Am, was founded in Key West in 1927 with service to Havana, Cuba? Their building is now a restaurant at 301 Whitehead Street. In 1928, novelist Ernest Hemingway visited Key West and acquired a Spanish colonial villa on Whitehead Street. He penned literary classics over the next 11 years, including For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, and To Have and Have Not. His life and work defined an era. More about him in a moment. In 1928, the Florida Keys Overseas Highway opened to the public for the first time. But in the mid-1930s, the Great Depression devastated the Florida Keys, and a massive hurricane ended railroad access in 1935. The island's appeal was overshadowed by financial hardship. Once the wealthiest city in the United States, it declared bankruptcy. The Federal Works Progress Administration sent artists and writers to Key West to paint murals, write guidebooks, and teach craft classes to help revitalize the economy. While on the island, internationally renowned playwright Tennessee Williams completed his play Summer and Smoke. He purchased an unpretentious house that became his home for the rest of his life. Key West's easygoing tropical atmosphere enchanted well-known artists, writers, and escapees from the real world. During Prohibition, many rum runners frequented the area, bringing rum from Havana to the mainland. The island's most famous rum runner was Joe Russell. He was a conch, a name given to Key West natives derived from the tasty mollusk found in the waters surrounding Key West. Although many daring rum runners were in the Florida Keys, Joe did pretty well for himself and squirreled away enough money to open a legitimate business. The day Prohibition ended in 1933, Sloppy Joe's Bar officially began. The rowdy atmosphere centered around Ernest Hemingway and his mob of cohorts, and since Joe knew the ocean around Key West so well, he became the author's boat pilot and fishing companion. However, for locals, the most beloved of all the bars in Key West was the Green Parrot. The building has been around since 1890, but it became a bar around the beginning of World War II. It was called the Brown Derby and was crazy popular with the Navy, whose submarine base was barely a block away. When the sub base pulled out in the early 1970s, the hippies, bikers, and folks wanting to stay anonymous took over. Judy Sullivan turned the place into a dive called the Green Parrot. About this time, the discovery of Key West pink shrimp created the next big boom to hit Key West. The Green Parrot turned into a honky-tonk hellhole with all sorts of cash-laden, drug-smuggling, quote-unquote fishermen. In 1982, the infamous Conch Republic, and our house's namesake, was born in protest against a Border Patrol roadblock set up at the head of the Florida Keys. The organizers proclaimed a secession and declared war on their mother country. They used loaves of stale Cuban bread for weapons, and they surrendered after 60 seconds, then immediately requested $1 billion in foreign aid. A year later, Jim and Linda Beam bought our house here at 1008 Southard Street for their home. And for his birthday, Jim bought a bar down the same street called the Green Parrot. Their timing could not have been better. Tourism was taking off. Cruise ships were starting to come in, and the highway from the mainland was being widened to accommodate the ever-growing amounts of new traffic. Excitement exploded when treasure hunter Mel Fisher and his crew discovered the $500 million treasure on a sunken 1622 Spanish ship off the waters of Key West. Jim and Linda Beam ran that rowdy corner bar for 30 years, and to this day, it has a reputation for kick-ass music. When Jim and Linda weren't at the Green Parrot, they were chilling right here at their home on Southard. Their vintage property at 1008 Southard Street has changed hands a few times since then, and now their restored, historic, Bahamian-style Benjamin Roberts house is owned by my wife and me. And our guests get to enjoy it as well. Come stay with us. Visit our website at conchrepublichouse.com. And as Jimmy Buffett would say, fins up.